session 4, The World and I, session 4. And this time I want to talk about two principles. I'm still on the topic of God and man, humans. And I'll apologize right now if I use these masculine, feminine attributes. I don't mean anything by them. It is simply the way that I'm communicating, and again, with my apology, I hope people don't take my statements out of context. But back to the topic. The two principles that guides my understanding of God and fellow human beings are actually, of course, I will not take credit for them. Jesus Christ stated them as the summary of the law and the prophets, he said. Not that I'm religious or anything like that, but frankly, the two principles, whether they were spoken by Jesus or anybody else, they do summarize two essential facts. There is one relationship which is vertical between me and my God, and that's personal and private, and he sees my inner soul, and I have my doubts, but I want to grow in my faith. I want to be able to grow in love for my Creator for the simple reason that he created me. And yeah, I fail a lot, in acknowledging and in living to the principle of this love. I have to work on it even more. I have been working on it, but I must work on it very much. But this relationship, which is personal, which is vertical, is also based on accepting that you want to have in your heart the laws of God imprinted in you. And I can't quite explain that, which you may call it consciousness or something else, but there are inside each of us, and maybe it is through environment, but I think not. I believe that the laws of God, and even if they were through the environment, it's the sum total of all the knowledge we've accumulated to this point, and I'm reflecting on that knowledge, and I'm saying that that vertical relationship, personal relationship between me and my Creator, is necessary for my growth, for my eventual, if I believe I have a soul, eventual intimate relationship, not only now in my physical form, but hopefully with my spiritual form as well. And I'm going to come to that in future sessions about the nature of this union or this relationship that I want to have now and in the life after. So that is the first principle. The second principle is the horizontal principle of my relationship with all my fellow human beings. And again, back to the point, love your neighbor was the principle. And who is my neighbor? Everybody. And I think these two principles, and especially the second one, are so fundamental. And they are really in that second principle, particularly in that second principle, is the solution to all world's ills. To love one's neighbor, to care, to sympathize, to show mercy, to show all the good attributes, and we'll talk in another session, how do I decide what are good attributes or not. I'm not into philosophy of all these things at the moment, but for now and for the purpose of progressing in these sessions, let's assume that we know the difference between what are good attributes and what are not. And in terms of the personal relationship between me and my neighbor, it should not be that difficult to imagine what are the principles that should guide that relationship. And going with that principle of loving your neighbor is the principle, and it's a corollary for sure, that do to others what you want them to do for you. Well, yeah, I agree 100%. If I want others to do unto me signs of respect and caring and whatever, then I should do the same thing for them. It's that simple. And I'm saying that these two principles are a foundation for both individual's relationship with God and individual relationship with other human beings. And if I take that as a starting point, along with what I've said in previous sessions, I think we have a foundation for moving forward. Just before I leave this topic, of course, I haven't mentioned, and now we are into session 4, that I don't want to get into this theory or the metaphysics of do I exist or not, and before I even ask about the existence of God, I will simply echo Descartes and maybe even more. I just feel that I cannot possibly, and even if I am in a dream, I can't possibly be in a dream, but even if I was in a dream, I still exist even in my dream. So, but all this matter aside, I do exist, and as a person, I believe others exist, and I also believe that God exists, so the vertical relationship and the horizontal relationship as principles that I've just described should be adhered to and, well, should be. I suggest it's necessary to adhere to these principles as a basis for our everyday life on the planet Earth, but even perhaps for those that believe in the life ever after. Uh, these principles are just as good. So that's what I wanted to say in this session, and on to the next.